so much to the Divine Shakti Arts podcast. It's a super honor to have you. And I love your cute little dog in the background there. But I guess we can just go right into it, introducing our audience a little bit and everyone here, just who you are and like maybe a brief background of your upbringing there. I did a little bit of like research, and I've been kind of following you for a decent amount of time now. I see that you're an artist, musician, and then I saw that you you do some comedy writing as well. Is that true?
In the past.
That's great. I like comedy too, and I do similar things perhaps. But yeah, more recently, definitely an emphasis on Sanskrit and yoga and spirituality. How about just giving us a quick overview of like how you got from there and to now?
And when you say there, do you mean childhood or do you mean a recent time?
I probably childhood, I guess. Just maybe like where you grew up, and then to where you are now.
So I'm pretty much in exactly the same place. So I just haven't really moved anywhere because all of life keeps coming back to the same point, no matter where I travel or where I go. The only thing that I guess has changed for me is something about the way I react to things. Maybe have learning more about how to respond to people and just learning more to play the game of life more rather than feel so downtrodden by it. So I guess that would be the main journey from then to now. But in more clear terms, it's been schooling from school. Had a very lucky, now I say it's lucky, maybe I wouldn't have said so when I was at school, but a great opportunity to practice meditation twice a day. And we had Sanskrit classes offered to us from the age of 4. And
wow.
It was a big emphasis on the Sanskrit. Like every day in assembly, we'd have not just Sanskrit, there'd be a whole range of different readings, like sometimes a Sufi reading, sometimes a reading from the Bible, sometimes Sanskrit stories, sometimes music, singing, and everyone was encouraged to partake in this. So it was a very broad overview of, I guess, spirituality from lots of different angles, and we had the opportunity to discuss things, and there was a big emphasis on the arts, spirituality, integrity and meditation, which was offered to us age 10 or so to choose whether we wanted to either read twice a day or meditate twice a day. So
wow.
Obviously young children are not going to choose to read because it's more learning. So we pretty much all of us chose we'd sit and do nothing twice a day.
Right.
So that was our first. But before that, my mother had been meditating, obviously before I was born. So when I used to see her meditating as a little girl, sitting very still in the morning and evening, and had always wondered what she was doing. So when I was about maybe 6, I remember asking her, can I sit next to you? Or just sat next to her and started sitting. I didn't quite know what we were doing. She did explain a bit as I got older, and then I did practice them with mantras a little bit too. So that was part of childhood. And then from school, that carried on for us all, and the meditation periods would get longer. When we were 10, we meditated for 10 minutes, but by the time we were 18, roughly it got a bit longer, maybe 20 minutes.
Wow.
And we were told to meditate for half an hour at home. So, and sometimes it was even the whole school meditation, and that was always quite nice, even though lots of us maybe weren't even into it. It didn't matter, just the whole school being quiet was significant. And I guess the most important thing from the school was every time we had a lesson, we had to be quiet for 1 minute, and every time we finished a lesson, the same. Maybe not a whole minute, but at least 30 seconds whilst we
Wow.
sounded the Sanskrit mantra. So that was the main thing.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Gives you that time to like integrate. That was definitely not the type of schooling I went through. So now this is a special school that you got sent to. It was
Yes, my mother and father chose a school called St. James in London,
okay.
UK.
Wow. Yeah, so that's a blessing that you got that opportunity. Wow. So that really started you off on the right track. And I guess having these spiritually hearted, minded parents, it just allowed you to kind of naturally go through that. Yeah. So that's pretty impressive. Now, like, were you always internally spiritual, or was there some sort of like transition? I know, like with me, I was. There was a period of just more exploration and
Mm.
more being more like wild perhaps, and then like realizing this core inside is so valuable, and it's really the only thing that matters, and so kind of just focused on that eventually. And I was wondering if there's any sort of like process like that happened with you during your journey.
I guess the people who would give the most honest answer to that would be friends and family, who would most probably still say, I'm not spiritual at all. But the thing, but they did have a joke at school where we all had nicknames for each of us, like what we would, just a funny, silly childhood nicknames. And my childhood nickname was Sri Govinda. So I guess my friends, but they are just joking. That's more because they saw that I liked Sanskrit and
I see.
was quite a goody-goody. So I guess part of me has been a goody-goody, but part of me has been a deep rebel. But the deep seated rebel was very was not sure where to go in the past, and I think maybe it did go wild sometimes, not massively, but it was deep, it was somewhere uncomfortable. It didn't know what it was rebelling against fully, didn't know what was happening. But I suppose the change now is that deep-seated rebel is sort of finding out that the biggest act of rebellion could be for me being okay.
Oh yeah. I guess you can consider that a type of rebellion, I guess, because that perhaps is not the norm. Uh, yeah, very very interesting. So, like teachers, you've had different teachers that have guided you. I can see your parents were definitely probably the first ones, that kind of
Mm.
guided you. But I guess now in your your later years and up to now, uh, who are these teachers be? I guess like we could talk about Sanskrit, but also maybe some other types of teachers that influenced you.
Mm.
Who might they be?
Mm, there's many strong influences. One of them has been an Alexander technique teacher who was just, he really lived the technique, but not just the technique, a whole things connected with it. And he
Mm,
was so steady in himself that I learned a lot from him about the way in which we as humans respond to situations in our, not just in our mind but in our body.
mm.
And he has been a great source of inspiration, and many Alexander teachers in that field, including a remarkable 80-year-old woman who is so full of spirit, and because she's been practicing that technique for many years. And outside of that field, there's been teachers of music. They've stood
Yes.
out a lot, like music teacher from school who was a rebel against the whole school, which we loved. She was a sort of such a fun teacher. We used to go to the pub together and have classes, and she somehow imparted the spirit of music to us without needing to be rigid.
Wow.
She was a great inspiration. Yeah. And music teachers since, like, connected with piano, and in India, music teachers from the Indian tradition who are so different in style to the way we learn the Western music, and they really, they are inspiration in how they keep me. They sort of know my character and can work with that. And so music teachers have been a big influence. Alexander teachers, and no gurus or no one specific in that sense, but the Advaita Vedanta tradition has been a really strong leaning post, I guess, and works from that tradition, from the Adi Shankara lineage all the way down to recent Shankaracharyas. That's been very strong. And so maybe now more teachers who maybe not be alive, but hearing about them or reading about them is very influential.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. And I love, you seem to really take on the styles of the Indian music and integrate them into the Western music. And that's what I think really attracted myself and the people around me to the music you're making, actually. Because it wasn't so, sometimes I can experience a certain limitedness to the music that I'm hearing. Like if it's too comfortable in a certain boundary here or too comfortable there. But I feel like what you're doing embraces the Indian sounds, of course, but it kind of opens it up into a broader integration with electronics even, and Western music, all sorts of instruments, and also your harmonies are kind of unique as well. So I'm loving all that stuff, and I'm just it was like, oh wow, what a breath of fresh air when I heard it, because it gives that sense of inspiration, of like, oh, there's more possible with music, and it actually it opens up a door, and then a lot more creativity can flow through that inspiration and create other things too. And so I can definitely see that. And in your music, you're like singing in 7/8 and all that fun stuff. And yeah, it's like, okay, this is great. Sanskrit, though, like you obviously have a deep connection. And just excuse me for one moment. I'm just going to turn off this noise I'm hearing.
Okay.
All right. So you obviously have a deep connection with Sanskrit, and it's I can see it's part of your practice, and it's also, it seems like, part of your gift for humanity, in a sense. Like you this is something you really value, and it's like kind of a part of your core now, and then you can offer it to everyone else. And just wanted to hear if there's any certain key, experiences that have affected you with Sanskrit that made you feel like, hey, this is real. Like, this is a real thing, and this works. Like, like, was there any like turning point where that affected you?
When you asked that question, 3 things came to mind. The first was when in 20s, when I was doing some performance to a big group of people, and it was just maybe not exactly the right thing to be doing, because I just heard the audience. They were very loud, very raucous, and very disturbed, if you like. And it felt like someone going into the lion's den. And
Mm.
the thing that helped me most of all was standing in the wings of the stage and just sounding a Sanskrit mantra 3 or 4 times. I could still hear them like booing the last person, and could hit that, but then in the moment of sounding the mantra just before going on stage, all of those sounds faded, and that's when I knew, I mean there's many moments, but that's one when it was very clear that if there's a connection with the sounds of Sanskrit, then they have the capacity to override all the worldly sounds, but at the same time not take you away from the world. You can still be living in it, but navigate it.
Wow.
So that was one time. And another time that came to mind, let me just remember, what was it? With Sanskrit and stuff, was when I was in New York in the visiting someone, and they'd asked me to give some sort of workshop or presentation, and I wasn't really sure what we should do in this presentation, and it was coming to just before the presentation, and in the past and sometimes still I would need my props, like maybe some notes or something to help me, and it may be an hour to go or until the presentation, and people were all starting to arrive, and I was just a part of it, but nevertheless I would have to sit in front of these people and do something, and still it had to feel the right thing to do. So when I went to sit down in this room just on my own very quietly, that there was Sanskrit text around the walls, and because there was the Sanskrit text that I could see, it was the Isha Upanishad.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that text around the wall, and then I closed my eyes, and I remember, I guess, asking for help, but in the moment, a few moments after that, I could see all the sounds of the Sanskrit alphabet, just see them. Sort of hear them, but it was more seeing them, like visually, in the Devanagari script. And they were like a train, I guess, all of them, but they weren't in me, they were somewhere outside, and they all whirled around and then entered into me, and then I knew 100% the Sanskrit sounds are completely part, I mean, not just of me, but I feel personally of every single being, because obviously I'm working through the Sanskrit, but definitely in that moment I knew they were part of my fabric. And if they were part of my fabric, then I would know exactly what to do in that presentation later, because it's like having a set of musical notes. Whichever note was needed would be pulled out automatically.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another moment.
Wow. Yeah, that seems very powerful. I know from what I understand of the Sanskrit language that it's a language literally formed from just these spiritual vibrations and then materializing in their natural course, and then taking form as these syllables. And so it's like said apparently to be the original language, because it's coming from that pure source and then manifesting, and then after that it, like through, I guess, the unconsciousness of the yugas and all this, it, all these other languages form and they kind of lose that purity. So I always think about that, and I think about the power that it could potentially carry. I'm still quite a beginner with the language, but I definitely recognize the feeling that it gives, and can appreciate that. And another interesting thing, I listen to a lot of talks from the integral yoga philosophy, and in one of these talks by Shraddha Luranade, he talked about how perhaps even the languages will all converge again into Sanskrit, because if it's truly the pure essence that that all these languages would go and kind of melt into this one language again, perhaps richer because it's expanded and seen all these other languages and now can come to its one source again. So
That's
that
beautiful.
yeah, it kind of excited me. So I after hearing that, I took it a little bit more serious to learn Sanskrit, and it would just be fun to perhaps even be able to speak it in conversation. That's you're kind
Yes.
of there, right? You can you can speak it a little bit.
Not fully,
Yeah.
no. You have to practice so regularly, but when I'm in India, I do try, and all the teachers speak to me in Sanskrit, and I try and speak slowly back, but they have to be very patient.
Right, right. Yeah, but still, I think just that effort, you know, that we're giving, definitely means something, and has its effect. Um, okay, so yeah, one, just a couple more things here. I, the Mother's Chant, Om Anandamayi Chaitanyamayi Satyamayi
Mm.
Paramay. That's our in our spirituality, our ashram here. That's kind of like the main mantra. And I was just wondering what caused you to choose that in one of your songs, and what made that resonate with you.
That was because of a visit to Puducherry or Pondicherry and
Yes.
visiting people who were very connected with the mother and from Auroville, and these people were so humble and they just loved the mother so much, particularly three men who felt like brothers to me. Maybe they were in their 60s and 70s, and they had devoted their lives in service to the mother even though they'd never even met her.
Wow.
So that went to my heart so much, and this mantra was very significant for these gentlemen, and they taught it to me. And because of receiving it from them and the connection that I also felt with the mother, not just through them but through her, I guess the atmosphere in that place, made it very, very important for me somehow. It was one of the first mantras that I had really truly felt deep love for, because there's
Mm.
different relationship with many mantras, but that one could feel love, and not just for it but from it and surrounding it somehow. So that's how it entered.
Wow. Yeah. I had a feeling it may have been because you were in Oroville or Pondicherry, the ashram there. That's wonderful. Um, yeah, I find that mantra so powerful, and yeah, I think it's like the Divine Mother. You know, it's calling her, descending that grace into the soul, and from awakening your consciousness from within. Uh,
Yes.
and and me and my friend, you know, the other, you know, we work in this vegetarian restaurant. It's part of the ashram, and,
Oh.
and we played it. We're like, oh my, we were struck because it was like that's our constant mantra that we celebrate, or that's like our home base.
Wow.
And so it was very very nice to hear it, and done in kind of a different way as well, which gave it new life. Uh,
Mm.
and yeah, that's great. I've been to Pondicherry once before,
Oh.
uh, and got a chance to experience everything there, and the energy, and yes, there's a certain uh, dedication and devotion that's just like unsaid, that kind of
Mm.
spans through the people there in the buildings. It's like holding her, the mother's force,
Yes,
and
very much.
in that area. And that's beautiful that you connected to that, because it's and that may be why that me personally, I connect to your music, is because I feel that in it, uh,
Mm.
the that sense in there. Um, so I guess that's all the main points I wanted to cover with you. Just a short and sweet little talk here.
That's perfect.
Yeah. But is there anything for say our or the Divine Shakti Arts audience, where it's kind of all different types of people I think listen to this, but we definitely focus on art, music, and yoga, and just humanity in general. If there's anything you feel to share right now, I know also we're all, well, a lot of people are struggling, of course, right now. Many different things, financial or fear, or just uncertainty in these times. So, is there anything that perhaps has helped you that might come natural to share with everyone else?
Life is a real pain, I know. Like, it's difficult being alive, full stop. But I know for sure from it came to me, and it's been a very, very, very helpful comfort through it all, that everything is always exactly as it should be in the very exact moment that it's happening, and nothing should ever be different than it is, and there's no need to try and make it different than it is. Exactly what you're facing right now in this moment is the only thing you could ever be facing. And I feel sure that at the moment of death, if you were to look back at your life and all the events that have happened, you would not really want to change any of it, because it's all in its right place. And then for me anyway, knowing that saves me a lot of energy, and then the energy that's saved on wishing it was different is then used in other ways that might be building up strength, or might just be purely saving the energy for when it is needed. That's one thing that helps me more than anything. And the other thing is more of a question that I ask myself at the moment is, when I'm not doing anything, what am I doing?
That's potent. Beautiful. Yes. How much energy are we wasting through fear and regrets, and yeah, that could just open up caches of good new energy for progress. And thank you so much for that. And is there where can we where's the best places these days to direct people to what you're doing, upcoming projects, and your music, etc.?
That's all a work in progress, trying to get it more accessible. More accessible, but I guess the easiest way is through YouTube and Facebook. And okay. if people aren't using them, then as far as possible, we'll try and develop the website Gaiea Sanskrit and make it more accessible. So that should be a good place.
Okay, beautiful. Yes, the YouTube and the Facebook and Instagram, you're all there, and you're uploading a good amount quite frequently. All new mantras. It seems like you're doing them perhaps even every day, and it's definitely a great source for inspiration, learning Sanskrit, etc. So I guess that's it. I appreciate this so much. And it is just my prayer that this strength continues with you, and you can kind of move forward uninhibited through your path here and just manifest what you're doing, because I find it a very powerful thing for humanity, and it could perhaps plant a lot of seeds in the mind of all these perspectives, all these people, and bloom later on to a greater sense of spirituality and music, Sanskrit, all these things. So just thank you so much, and I appreciate you.
Thank you, Mike. And I wish for you and for all the listeners right now, wherever you are listening, whatever moment it is, that you know your unique gifts and you never doubt it, and follow it. Follow your heart always, and trust it deeply, and that you are uniquely beautiful and at the same time part of the whole.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.